Join. Thank you for joining. I'm Riziki Zafira, one of the co-hosts of tonight's discussion. We also have Maisha Hudson. Where you at, sis? Hey, where'd she go? Okay, she'll join us back in a second. We also have Miss Sheridan Ingram. Hi, sis.
Peace and love. How y'all doing?
Mr. Ricardo Parker. Where are you at, bro? Is he okay? His camera's off. But we are Black Tantra Group ATL NYC. However, we include other practitioners and sacred sexperts and people who are in the practice, because we just realized the importance of us joining together and creating this movement. So before we get too deep into the discussion, I kind of did want to give a background, or Sheridan or Ricardo or Maisha kind of give a background of why Black Tantra Group started, what the purpose is, and pretty much why we're here, the work we're here to do. Oh, also, yes, yeah, I got that, Sophia, I got you. We're going to introduce the panelists later. So, yeah, go ahead, Sheridan, Maisha, or Ricardo.
Yeah, so I'll let me know if there's any feedback.
Sure.
I got my headphones on. So yeah, Black Tantra Group of NYC and then ATL started as a way for us to bring together practitioners of color, specifically of the African diaspora, who were either teaching Tantra and those who are interested in Tantra. There are a lot of circles of other folk who are getting together and teaching Neo-Tantra from a different perspective, but we really wanted to bring Tantra as a healing modality to Black people, and finding that we did not have enough spaces and that many of us did not feel comfortable going to spaces where we were not represented, and we needed our own representation. I know I was tired of not having a community in New York that I could go to. Atlanta had a great community, but I didn't see a lot of other places. I know DC has a little community, and people are interested. They just don't know where to go. Hence, this group was born.
Mm-hmm. Sheridan or Ricardo, did you want to add anything?
I think, well, I'll share briefly that in my conversations with a lot of people who are not familiar with the work, they know about, going to yoga as like, a part of like a fitness regimen, mm-hmm. or like other different parts of, using affirmations or using mantras. But the idea, the thought of energy work or anything like that, something more comprehensive, is not something that most people of color are familiar with. And so I was approached by Ricardo and Maisha, and they're like, let's do this. Mm-hmm. So, just to bring a sense of awareness that it is, for those who don't even know about it, that it is an option for them in terms of healing.
Ricardo?
Nothing to add. Maisha and Sheridan, hit all the key points, and so I'm just gonna be here to add throughout the course of our session tonight.
Okay, awesome. And again, so I kind of just spearheaded the Black Tantra Group Atlanta, but again, we're inclusive of practitioners that we know, which is another reason for this particular webinar, because we do want you all to get to know other practitioners that are doing the work, or people that are in this work, so that we're all familiar with each other. So now that brings me to my next point, to introduce the panelists. So of course we have myself, Sheridan, Maisha, and Ricardo, but I also want to introduce Emmanuel Taylor. I want to introduce Jay English, and those two for sure are tantric practitioners. So I want to open the floor to allow both of these gentlemen to introduce themselves, their training, what they've been doing, and why they felt like it was definitely important to join and be a part of this webinar, especially for it to happen. So Emmanuel or Jay, who wants to go first? Well, Jay, your mic is already on, so go ahead, honey.
Okay, cool. What's up, Riziki?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, everybody. What up, Maisha? My name is Jay English. I have a company named Honors Yoga, and we do, retreats. Some of those are based on sacred sexuality. Also do energy healing sessions, a lot of heart work, past life regression, meditation. Pretty diverse, but definitely one of the things that I do is focus on sacred sexuality. So I feel like it's important for us to, one, have open communication about issues that have emerged. There are a number of scandals that have emerged in the last month, and even more that emerged like in the last even 48 hours, right? And we have to at some point get to a place where we have a code of ethics that we expect from practitioners, as well as sort of like red flags that we can let people know about so that they're not going into this blind and they don't get abused. One of the things that definitely hurts my heart is when I see people say, I went to a tantric practitioner and now I have trauma. And I think that that's something that we should all work to fighting against, and something that we can all unify around. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Brother Emmanuel, you want to go ahead? And we have more on the line. I just want to, go a couple at a time. Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Okay, is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. My name is Emmanuel Taylor. Diverse background as well. Tantra, yoga, meditation, martial arts, going back about 15 years now. Many know me as one of the instructors and practitioners within the Grand Trine Tantra system. I joined this conversation for very similar reasons. I think it would be a shame if the Tantra community didn't speak up in light of the recent events. I think it's very important that, again, we have ethics, we have standards, people have clear expectations to know what to expect during a Tantra session at the least, what to expect when interacting with practitioners. And I think it's also important for practitioners to listen to the broader community that they're a part of, to understand people's needs. And so I'm really hoping that this is a two-way conversation, and not really just an opportunity for practitioners to sort of speak or dictate what it should be, but an opportunity for all of us to listen and come to a better common understanding of what it is that's needed for all of us to move forward effectively.
Thank you.
Riziki, Ricardo, and Sheridan, can you take a moment to introduce yourselves, because everybody who's here may not know who each of us are?
Sure.
Sure. Who wants to go first?
Sister Sheridan.
Okay, I can go. I've been on a journey of healing and exploration for about 5 years. Got my start with Reiki in 2013, and then I became a student of Grand Trine Tantra in 2016. So just using that and working on myself and trying to create value in other people's lives. So that's me.
Thank you. Ricardo.
I'm Ricardo Parker. I am one of the original founders with Maisha, Sheridan, and Ziki of the Black Tantra Group. And my path started based on my own personal interest in elevating my sexual performance. So I discovered Tantra in various books and was curious about, finding out if there's someone I can study with, that's moving it from the theoretical to the practical and applied. And it took some time, number of years before I found some people to work with. And I started out with Juju Mama. And through that connection later found Master Yao of the Grand Trine system. And, I'm a tier 2 graduate in the Grand Trine system. Also recently got initiated into Reiki level 1 with Thomas Hargrove, and been practicing, actively practicing with clients for about 1.5 years.
So I'm Raziki Zafira. So my journey started off doing astrology. Then I went to a Sacred Sexuality retreat, met Jay. He did some stuff. I was like, oh snap, what is that? So then I started getting into energy healing. So I am a certified master level, I guess, Reiki practitioner. Also graduated Tier 3 Grand Trine, certified to teach and practice. And also started, doing retreats with Brian Craig, who's another brother on here. But my journey again started because, I saw the healing that the healing that other people got from it, and I wanted the same. I had my own story of abuse and sexual misuse, and this journey really helped me. So I really got into this work to help others, specifically men. My focus started on men, and then expanded to women and just doing healing circles. And it's just such a beautiful art. So I am grateful for being a part of Black Tantra Group. I am honored to be a part of it. I'm grateful that you all came online. I'm grateful for the panelists, because this is very important. And what we don't want is for people to see these articles on the internet and run away from this. Understanding that it's not the art itself that's bad. It's just some people out there are just abusing it. So that's my spill. Maisha.
Hi, my name is Maisha, otherwise sometimes known as Baby Maisha. My company is Sensual Energy Alchemy. I have been studying chakras and energy work for close to 20 years now, as well as psychology. I have a certification in Reiki 2, as well as certifications in spirit guide stuff, Tantra through Grand Trine. I've studied with Juju Mama, done just a lot of different studies over the years. My primary work is with men, is healing men and helping them connect their heart space to their genitals and decreasing that disconnect that has taken place. That work, kind of similar to Raziki, has led me to working with women and helping women to understand themselves, their power, and their interactions with men. So now it's become a two-for that I do work with men and women. Right now, I'm currently studying under the Institute of Authentic Tantra, which is in Canada. It's Canadian based now because Davy Ward has moved to Canada. It is one of the only schools that is accredited. It just happens to be in Canada. We don't yet have something like that statewide in the United States. But hopefully we can get something like that here on this side. But I'm studying with her school right now. And when I'm finished with that training, which is 11 months, I will be able to become a certified sexologist. So that's how I got to this journey. Is a whole nother story, but that's where I'm right now.
Awesome. But we definitely found it important for masculine energy to be online, to represent, because, we have to know that there are some brothers out here that are trustworthy, who are not violating. And I don't want this to be one-sided. Women do violate too. So we just don't hear about it. So we're going to open this discussion. So this kind of takes us to our second segment, which deals with accountability. And so I would like to open the floor to, I want to start with the men, if that's okay. I'm going down the line, Jay, Emmanuel, Ra, if you would like to chime in too, and definitely introduce yourself. But when it comes to accountability, what are some precautions that you take or that you advise, and just your overall process in that? Okay, Emmanuel, Jay, anyone?
Well, when you say accountability, I think I know what you're getting at, but if you could provide a context on what you mean, that's part of it.
Sure. Like, okay, so for instance, and I'm trying to not be so blah, but I just gotta be me, y'all. We're gonna be transparent up in here. Okay, so for instance, we know that like during tantric sessions, things can be in gray areas. Yes. So we want to establish what accountability looks like, not just on the practitioner's part, but also on the person who's getting worked on. And this is, so let me share this small story real quick. Oh, okay, you want to go ahead? Okay.
I got exactly what you're saying now. I do want to hear your story though, but I got you, and I'm ready to respond. Okay, so for me, and my perspective and my journey to kind of establish my own personal ethics, is not any way to try to impose on anybody else, but just to say from in my mind what I think is ethical going into a session. If you have not established a relationship that is involving private parts before the session, in my opinion, is you shouldn't be doing that during a session. One of the issues that I do see is people, and I've heard this a number of times, people kind of get high off the energy, you know, and they are orgasmed up and all that, and that's great. And it's almost like you're on ecstasy or something. And then for a person to choose to engage that person during that time, to me, is unethical, right? For me personally, especially if they don't have that type of relationship beforehand, because it's almost like, you know, this person is drunk, right? And they can go there and say yes, and then later they'll regret it because they weren't in their sober mind. So for me, that's one of those things that's important, is that if that's not established, to fall back from that. In general, I don't personally engage in kissing or private areas or sexuality in general during my sessions. That's not necessarily what everybody's practice is. Some people have different things that do involve variations of that. But I think it's important, if you do, to make sure that that's known on the front end, and that people either verbally account to the fact that they're okay with that, and that everybody is in the clear before you enter into the session. It's tricky in my opinion, because you know there are so many different ways in which people engage, and if you're paying a person for a session, and then you start having sex with them, that even starts to become tricky, right? To me.
Okay, so let me pause you there, because the chat's going off, and great point, and that's my apologies, I did skip a question. First, let's clarify what is Tantra and sacred sexuality. Let's start there. So I do want to go down the line, because everybody's perspective may be a little different, you know, depending on the work that you do. So I do want to go down the line. So Jay, go ahead, and then I want Emmanuel, and then, you know, the ladies can answer, but go ahead.
Okay, so sacred sexuality, in my eyes, is learning to engage the energy of life, because sexuality is the energy of life, the creative energy of life force, which is really like the power of the creator within us, in such a way that helps us to evolve, helps us to become more enlightened, helps us become more healing, expands our abilities to have pleasure, helps to balance us. So any activities that enter and are part of that sphere, to me, that's included in sacred sexuality. So that can take a number of faces, right? So it could be expanding the way that you have sex on a physical level, expanding the way that you just communicate and connect with the person at a heart level. It could be expanding the way that you understand how to use sexual energy, whether you're in front of a person or, you know, long distance. There are a lot of different ways in which sacred sexuality could express itself, or just, you know, a group of men and a group of women learning to honor and respect each other, and do things in honor of the God and the goddess within them. Like that, all of those things fall into the boundary of sacred sexuality in my eyes. Tantra is a tricky word, right? I think that Tantra is something that in some places is centered around sexuality. Traditionally, it's not really centered around sexuality. It's a word that sexuality is an element of it, but it's more so around the general practice of understanding how to connect to cosmos and oneness. Depending, I don't see any problem with people viewing Tantra within the spectrum of sexuality, but I do see sometimes when people only view it from a sexual perspective,
right?
Sometimes they leave out certain parts of it that are important that will otherwise balance it, right?
Correct.
So that's an important thing to say, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Emmanuel, you want to go ahead and add your perspective?
Sure. Yes, I know that these can be definitely, you know, loaded terms. So, you know, I would say that, you know, again, Tantra and sacred sexuality are related. I also view Tantra as being an all-encompassing life science. Look at Tantra as being the highest and most natural expression of who we are in our DNA. I think sacred sexuality represents the highest expression of our sexual and reproductive health, and what it looks like when we truly honor the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and we take care for their interaction. I can also, you know, define Tantra as we would not define it, but state that an aspect of Tantra involves, the utilization of sexual energy, expanding our capacity to be able to use sexual energy within our person, to express that and to project that out into the rest of existence. And one form that can take is through energy projection. So that's saying a lot already. I think I'll just leave it there. I'm trying to, figure out what is it that I can say that's unique.
Well, and if I may add, and I definitely want to go to Sheridan, Devi, Maisha, and Ricardo. So I know for me personally, you're right about the life science, and I agree with Jay. But also for me, it wasn't after I got through like all the orgasmic stuff, it was about breaking the blockages, the generational pathology, healing my generations before me, and knowing the work I'm doing, I'm healing, generations after me. And so I saw Tantra, which, breaking it down in the Tibetan meaning, excuse me, Maisha, or somebody can correct me, weaving light and sound, right? But for me, I saw this system as something that could build nations, because it's about healing, it's about clearing, it's about knowing how to work with one another to create, rather it be coming together and creating a baby, or coming together as a community or a family to create a nation, or whatever the case. So I saw it as such this bigger thing than just intimacy and orgasms. I saw it as a way to correct the generations of trauma that's been embedded in our spirits, in ourselves, in our, in all of that. So that was my take on it. Maisha, Ricardo, Sheridan, what do you feel?
So I agree with all of you guys. And so for me, I look at sacred sexuality as like this umbrella, right? It's like if you think about like Christianity, and you've got like the Baptist, the Protestant, that type of thing. So there's sacred sexuality, and then there's Tantra, there's Taoism. There are different forms that can fall under sacred sexuality. And Tantra is one of those forms. It we all know where everything originated from, right? So we don't have to go over that. Got it. So the purposes of Tantra, that's the form that took shape in India, right? Or, that section. And yes, it is to weave light and form with sound. The purpose of Tantra and Taoism and all sacred sexuality is about union. It is a yoga. It is a practice of weaving our spiritual selves with our physical form. And oftentimes as humans, our minds are so small that we don't understand how great that connection is. And so because we're in this baby stage of really understanding that connection, many people have created this neo-tantra movement, which focuses on the sex part, because we haven't yet fully understood that it is the act of creation that is, as Riziki was saying, it's the act of creation. And that creates nations. Is the act of creation through sex that creates babies, and that creates life, and that creates businesses, and that creates everything that happens. So really, it's not about penetrative sex, though learning this practice can enhance that portion of life. It is really a spiritual practice that works on weaving together your spiritual self with the physical form, and understanding how the pleasure that can come out of all of that when we're actually living in this bliss, and we're in union with ourselves and with others.
Good stuff. Sheridan, Ricardo, did you have anything to add before I kind of transition?
This is Ricardo. Maisha tied it up so well that I don't think I can add anything to expand on it anymore. Thank you, Maisha.
Awesome. So yeah, I want to transition, because before we get into the accountability, right? So this is something that I think would help move things along. So there's a slight difference in practices in the Western world and the Eastern world. And sometimes a lot of what we're reading, is due to that. So for instance, I've studied over here, but I've also connected with people overseas to where their practices are naked. It's normal for them to be in the nude. And sometimes they're more open and they're more open about sexuality. So certain practices that are overseas that are normal can be considered like taboo and really just, you know, crazy over here. So knowing that as practitioners, as teachers, this is this accountability portion that we're dealing with. So when we have people in the room, like some of the new people here on Zoom, they're like, well, what is Tantra? And as practitioners, if we know how new they are, if we know there's a lack of understanding, if we could kind of, if we're doing our work and we're seeing how open or closed someone is, yes, now getting into the accountability section of how we're conducting these particular sessions. And one viewer is saying, what are some boundaries that should be in place? So Emmanuel, would you like to pick that up?
Sure, 100%. So, you know, when I was coming up in Tantra and other forms of sacred sexuality like kink and BDSM, you know, just consent is just stressed. A phrase that I like to use is explicit and enthusiastic consent, right? Consent has to be both explicit and enthusiastic. And if it's not enthusiastic, there is no consent. And so that's something that, you know, continues in all of my work and something that I like to reinforce with, you know, those who I have the opportunity to work with both as clients and with students. A rule that I keep is no sex with clients, period. You know, no genital touch with clients during sessions. Explicit contracting around what type of touch is appropriate within each session, and allowing clients to know that they have the opportunity and the right to revoke consent at any point in time. If they say, you know, before we begin a session, yes, it is perfectly fine for you to touch my elbow. And during the session, I no longer feel comfortable with you touching my elbow, then consent has been revoked, and that's respected, you know. And so I think that communication and dialogue is important with every single encounter to make sure that all consent around physical touch is explicitly agreed upon, and knowing that consent can change at any point in time.
Okay, thank you for that. So I would like to ask one of the women on here, as far as accountability and boundaries, owning your yes and owning your no, you know, talking about experiences that may have been tricky that you may have went through, or things that we can advise women. And I do see the comment in the chat. So, you know, we're transparent here. We'll let people use their voice. And, you know, so yeah, so I want to address that first, and then we'll definitely, you know, address what's, you know, any and all comments and things that need to be expressed. Okay, so we definitely got you, sis. Go ahead, Maisha or Saradin.
Well, for me personally, and like my own experience, I've had, not with Tantra specifically, but with healing and touch modalities, I've been in a situation where I guess because consent wasn't framed in quite the way, like how Emmanuel talks about enthusiastic and explicit consent, or about revoking consent, I found myself in a situation where I didn't, as a grown ass adult, I didn't even understand that I could say, you know what, actually I changed my mind.
That's major about accountability too. So thank you for talking about that. Go deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's, not that I'm going to sit up here victim blaming or, you know, doing anything like that, but if I had my own inner programming, which is why I needed Tantra, or why I needed some sort of energy work to understand, like, yes, I have full agency over my body. And even though I'm paying for a session, or I'm sitting here with, you know, a practitioner, I don't necessarily, if I'm not with it, then I can say yes. We often talk about not, oh, you didn't say anything, but understanding that you can. So maybe that's like Emmanuel said, and like others have said, having the conversations up front about like what the goal is, or what you're looking to get out of a session. Like I went to I approached someone years ago and asked for, I'm interested in having a session. And this was at the time when I was a, Tantra baby, and it was like orgasms. I'm just here for the orgasms, But he asked me what my intentions were or what I wanted, and I couldn't vocalize exactly what I was looking for. And so we just kind of took a pause, and he's like, okay, well, let's come back to that. So, remembering that you can say no. That's my biggest thing that I want to share, and remind men, women that you can say no.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maisha, did you want to add anything?
So I had one experience once where I didn't, again, the boundaries weren't necessarily made clear. And I think that this happens a lot when you are in a group setting, especially, and you're practicing, especially with new people, and everyone's not understanding of explicit or enthusiastic consent. And it's like, okay, we're going to practice now. And here you are on the table, and here's somebody that you don't know. And now all of a sudden they're, doing things with you, and it's in a learning environment. So you're not sure if you should say no. If you say no, will you not get to learn? And so you're a little confused. And that's the position I found myself in, where I was practicing with someone who didn't quite understand the boundaries, and I didn't know where my voice was. And his hand was way too close, between my legs, as he was like trying to circulate the energy, and it felt way too uncomfortable, to the point where the next time I did not participate because I was just so shook from the experience. It was a trigger for me and I felt like I wasn't able to speak. So on both parts, it was, we're both students here. That was there's an important piece of learning here. And the great thing about Tantra is that it teaches us to have a voice and say no. And we'll get into when it's a practitioner, right? And how that can kind of, it's like, when you go to the doctor, right? Practitioners were like doctors, right? And so we'll get to that in a minute, and how that psychologically can have us thinking we don't have a voice. But in this situation, I know I could have said, hey, your hand's too close.
Yeah.
But I didn't know to do that. I would do that now, but I didn't know that then. And also to instruct the students to maybe not put your hands so close, or to be more watchful.
Yeah, yes. Now, and just to add, so of course I have a story, but, and I shared this before. So, and it was also, it's also a story of me taking accountability. So, it was me and a practitioner. I was on the table, and working on me moving the energy, and in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish he could eat me out. This is what I'm saying in my mind. I'm in orgasmic energy, whatever. And sure enough, his face ended up, in between my legs. And so I'm enjoying it. And then it's over. And then I get off the table, and then I get mad. I get mad because I'm like, now normally I wouldn't even do that with him. And I feel upset because he knew I was under the energy, and he shouldn't have da. But then a part of me said, I had to somewhat take accountability, because I could have said no, I just didn't. Now, I do agree that at times we're not empowered to say no. We're not told it's okay to say no. Sometimes it can be where it's okay to just, it's okay to go with the energy. So establishing these boundaries, empowering the yeses, empowering the nos is very, very, very important. So, and I'll say on the flip side too, there's been men on the table, women practitioners, and they end up sucking their penis. Now, these are men are, so I want to be clear, this goes both ways. I want to be clear that this goes both ways. It's not just men, and there has been women violating other women on the table too. So I don't want the tantric community to be scared of our men. Okay, they're not the only ones. So I do want to open the floor, if that's okay, since we're talking about experiences.
Yeah, I want to thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important that I think hearing your story is important and helps highlight the whole reason why we're doing this. And many of us are familiar with your work that are on here. So, I mean, I'm grateful that it propelled you to do the work that you're doing, because we need women like you to really empower women and to help us understand that we have a voice, especially dealing with situations like this, which actually does lead into the thought. And for people who are new here, it's important that you understand. And you know, many of us who have come in new and didn't know, I want you guys to all know that practitioners, some come into this work with their own issues. You know, and some people come into this type of work as a way to cover up their issues, and they don't really work fully through them, and they use this as like the breeding ground for that. And some of us really come into this because we want to heal, and we are healing ourselves, and now we want to go out and heal others. And this will go into Shayla's point later on when we talk about, you know, what to look for and the red flags to look for in a practitioner who has done some work versus one who's kind of like using sacred sexuality to act out their issues with women or act out their issues with men, because that exists out there as well. And I really appreciate for being on here and for sharing that, especially with people who may not have been familiar with her and her story. So thank you. Which question do we go ahead, Vaziki?
So yeah, I kind of wanted to also reiterate to the men, this is why we need more men in this work. I want to say this again. This is why we need more men in this work, because women need healing. And I know I've had some of my best healing from a man. Okay. But we also see how some brothers and sisters are violating. And here's another thing. We need more men holding men accountable. It's only so much as women we can say or do. Just like with women, we have to hold more of us accountable. Because like I said, I done heard some stories, and this is me being transparent. When I was first on the table, I was a grabber. I mean, like, as far as I would be on the table, I feel energy and I'm just reaching. And if, you know, if I happen to grab his penis, I was there, you know. But as a woman, when I'm first thinking, and this is me being transparent, because there's toxic femininity, there's toxic masculinity. As a woman, I'm thinking, oh, that ain't nothing. I'm a woman. He's a man. Of course, he's not going to mind me grabbing him. No, that's still not okay. One more person, if y'all don't mind, to bring on. I want to introduce Brian Craig. And the reason why, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, bro, but sorry, the reason why I wanted to introduce him is because him and his wife, Karen, have created safe spaces. And I just want Brian to share a little bit about what that consists of, because when he does these retreats, these are enclosed spaces, and he has to make sure that, you know, these environments are safe, especially for women just as well as men. And, you know, I've presented at all of their retreats. They get better and better every year, and I know Jay does retreats as well. But I want both actually to express, you know, in creating these safe spaces, what are the things that you do? What do you make sure you require from your practitioner, so forth and so on. So, Brian, you want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? You hear us?
Yes.
Karen's here with me too.
Hey, Karen.
Yeah, it's when we first started, that was literally the first line of our intention, is creating a safe space. And what that meant for us was for people to be able to let their guards down and be able to trust the people that were in that space, you know, practitioners, as well as the other guests. So we do screen everyone that comes and find out what their intention is. There are people that we didn't allow to come to be a guest because we didn't feel their intentions were right. But we do have our, you know, all of our practitioners, you know, to sign an agreement that they will not engage with the guests. Because as someone pointed out, it is a trance. I think Jay said, it is a trance that you're in. It is a place where you're, you know, oh my gosh. And then you're in that place when you come out, like with you were like, oh my God, even though you wanted it in that moment, you didn't, you woke up out of the trance, like what the fuck just happened, And so, we are held to such a high standard. I don't know who said it earlier, but it was like the fact that more people are being traumatized by healers is just really, it's really bad. And it has become over-sexualized because of, people look at it as a sexual thing. Tantra is sexual, but I think you had one of the best definitions of Tantra really is to heal the blockages. And what the problem is practitioners are attracted to Tantra, the healing arts, because we do want to heal. Part of it we do want that, but we aren't healed. And so we just got through with our Tantra certification, and we couldn't thank you so much. But we went through a very intense process of healing because the tools that we were training to present, guess what? We had to take our own medicine day after day. Day after day, we had to heal ourselves. So people are jumping in on how to heal others, and they have not taken the time to heal their shit.
And doing the continuing work.
Doing the continuing work.
It's a lifetime.
It's a lifetime because, you in a space with someone's sexual, everybody loves sexuality. Everybody wants to, bring somebody to a place of bliss and orgasm. But it's, we have to take the time to heal ourselves.
One of the things that I like about the school that we're in, which is Davy Ward's Authentic Tantra, is that we're under a strict code of ethics.
Yeah.
And as a practicing lawyer for my entire life, that's something that I'm accustomed to, is that concept of being under a code of professional responsibility, so that you're not following just your own sense of what's right, what's wrong, what's proper, what's improper, because that can fluctuate. It can fluctuate because you've grown. It can fluctuate just, you've entered into a different space. It can fluctuate because of ego. It can fluctuate for so many reasons. But if you're under a code of ethical responsibility, then there's certain standards that you have to follow no matter where you are at any given moment. And I think that does help to protect your clients. It helps to protect everyone who is coming and trusting you and coming into a healing space, because it's a trust.
It is trust.
I mean, and it needs to be taken really, really seriously. Like someone has come to you, whether it's like with Brian and I in a retreat setting or coming as an individual client, they're coming and they're saying, I'm trusting you with my issues, I'm trusting you with my body, my soul, my life. And that's, there's a really high standard that has to be maintained.
Yeah,
I love the fact that you're doing this, by the way.
Yeah, and Emmanuel, I don't have sex with my clients. I don't have genital contact with my clients. We need to have hard rules.
Yeah.
I don't care if they say yes. I don't care what they want. I don't care if they beg you. You cannot have sexual contact with your clients. The end. And especially those that do table work. We don't do table work, but those of you that do table work, it's so imperative that you have your hard rules, because you get in a trance when you get into that room and the person's orgasming and they're screaming and they're pulling at you, and it's just like they want it, because that's that part of us that just like wants to engage. But you have to have those hard rules. I know Jay, he has his hard rules. A lot of you do. But the thing is that needs to be the standard. There is no sexual contact with a client, period.
Can I speak on that for just a second too?
Sure.
I think that one thing that is underappreciated is the fact that the practitioner can also enter into a state of trance when doing this work.
Right.
And that level of energy is flowing. Not only is, like I can say for myself, one of the most powerful experiences I had with full body orgasm, I was doing a distance energy work session with a client when I was still new in my practice. And we both went into, full body orgasms for like 45 minutes. And I was like, what the heck? I was not expecting this. This is crazy, because I was still healing, myself. And I was receiving healing in that process as well. And so I think it's one of the reasons why, meditation and meditation instruction has become so core to my practice in healing, because meditation allows people to effectively navigate the state of trance. One of the things that I teach is how to actually be productive in a state of trance, right? How to be able to intentionally introduce mantras or visualizations, or, being able to navigate while in trance, allows you to, not just fly off into outer space and do whatever comes to you in that moment. So, and it's one of the reasons why Tantra is a branch of yoga as well. And I think part of, isolating the sexual practice or even the energy work practice, taking it out of a greater context and a more holistic system can be dangerous, because people don't always learn all of the other skills that are necessary to effectively navigate in these very complex situations. And I wanted to say one other hard and fast rule that I was taught as a Tantra practitioner was that at the end of a session, your client has to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that is one thing that has been very helpful. I've been very consistent with this in my practice over the years. There's no hanging around. Let's talk. Why don't we have dinner? No, after the session is over, you gotta go. And one of the rules that we had learned originally was, like if somebody says, oh, the energy's moving, I want to have sex. It's like the answer is no, you have to leave. Now the next day, if they decide that they want to come back, then that's another conversation for y'all to have. But the answer is always no, you have to leave, right? And keeping that simple rule of making sure that there's that physical separation after a session ends, I think has kept myself and a lot of people out of a lot of, crazy situations.
Yeah, and I think even after you have a session that, someone said, I believe it was Jocelyn, that her hard rule is 6 months after, we can't date, because I don't want you to date the practitioner healer. I want you to date me because of me. So we have to have those hard, fast rules, which is hard sometimes because you may generally have a connection, but the thing is that what is it built on? You know what I mean? So we really have to have these rules. And someone talked about code of ethic. We're held to that. But how do you do that for an entire, community of people? Do we just continue to hold them accountable? Or do you expose them? I think.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, and see, okay,
that's it.
So for and I thank you for sharing, because everything that you guys said was very valid. So like certain practitioners like myself, from a more shamanistic, so I probably will not ever get no nationally accredited thing or whatever, but a part of this work is really knowing the person you're working with, researching them, asking about their reputation. Have they had any complaints, and I'm gonna just be transparent. It does bother me knowing I was trained under a person who has so many complaints, and when these things came out, I was the first one screenshot and calling like, hey, what's this? This need to be addressed. I'm like, okay, we need to get these groups. I need to know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? People who know me, I don't play them games. I ask questions, I make phone calls. So the point is that I do feel as a community, if we're having these issues, I feel like we got to step up. And this is why the Tantra I teach is about building warriorhood within our men. Because if some shit hits the fan, who's protecting the sacredness or the integrity of our work? So if we know that men are violating, where are our warriors checking this man? You know what I'm saying? So again, I don't know. There are different forms of Tantra that teaches different forms of whatever. But again, I come from this aspect of nation building. And if we are going to move forward in this movement, and especially because we're all here because we said how whitewashed this movement is, how watered down this movement is, then we need to take responsibility and accountability for protecting it. And one of the main things that was so important that I saw was, this is why this art was kept a secret. Because the more people, the more, it gets watered down, it gets abused, the wrong people, the wrong people join it. and it just gets out of hand. And people know in my class, I don't care if you paid money or not. No, I don't care if you paid money. If you're not doing the work, you're not graduating. Like that's just what that is. But some schools, which is another thing to look at, if you're not doing self-work and they're still graduating you anyway, that's a problem. And that's one of the reasons I had to separate from certain, groups, because they're not considering that. And also in my work, I had to partner with mental health counselors. There are people like in tantric work, and I don't know about everybody else's curriculum, but mental health is not dealt with to the extreme that it needs to be. There are people coming into this work with mental health issues. I have a couple clients, PTSD, anxiety. So these are things that we really have to take into consideration when we are entering this work, when we're looking for practitioners, when we're looking for certain groups and stuff to join. Are they taking these things into consideration? Okay, that's my spill, sorry.
I just want to say one quick thing. Like, you guys are starting a movement, so why not come up with a code of ethics with people that partner with you? Like, whoever's on that, they've agreed to abide by this code of ethics. If there's a complaint, they get removed from that, because that does add a level of credibility. Like, you are starting a movement and accountability. Thank you. You know, so right?
That's we've got. So yes, we have that. We're already working on that.
Perfect.
Yes, it will be in play. And so somebody was asking about. Oh, let me quiet down. I'm all talking a lot. Somebody was asking about boundaries and how do you know what's what. Like Riziki said, there are a lot of schools of Tantra out here that are really interested in having somebody go through like a weekend course for $5.95, and then you walk away and you have a Tantra certificate. Understand that many of these modalities, like Riziki was saying, were secret. Many of these modalities, you couldn't go find a teacher. Your teacher had to choose you. If you were studying actual Tantra the way it is taught, and you went to India and you were like, I want to learn Tantra, the guru is going to be like, absolutely not. You go away somewhere and I will decide if I'm going to teach you. It's not this, well, you come for a weekend, there's 500 of you in a room, you do some eye gazing when you look into the left eye and all of a sudden you breathe together. Now you're Tantra level 1. No, this is serious stuff that we're dealing with people. And so one of the things that's important to know is, what type of training has your practitioner had? What type of self-work have they done? It is okay to ask that, just like you would ask your gynecologist, your doctor, your dentist, anyone else, what kind of training have you had for what you're dealing with me? It is okay for you to ask for a signed agreement. If your Tantra session consists of Facebook messages and yeah, we're gonna meet at Red Roof Inn, that is not Tantra. If your Tantra session consists of you having a phone call and dude talking about how much he's gonna make you squirt, that is not a Tantra session. If your Tantra session consists of
It's trap tantra, y'all. It's trap tantra. Okay, that's the point. When y'all hear stuff like this, it's trap tantra. Run away.
No, if you run into a woman who's gonna talk about how she's gonna, stroke you all kinds of ways, that's not Tantra. That's not what that is. That's someone who's acting out their power trip on you. And like Emmanuel said, the power is real. I'm a female practitioner, and even with doing lingam massages, there's a time when I can get caught up in that energy. This dude is doing this thing and I'm like, yeah, I'm working this. And then I'm like, no, I'm not. Yeah. I'm a facilitator. I'm not doing shit. I'm a facilitator to help this person heal. And then men coming saying, well, can we continue? No, we cannot. This is not a happy ending type of situation. And me stepping back out of that, because that's my ego coming into play, right? And having to do that self-work. These things happen and they're real. But I want
emotional intelligence.
That is very important. If you want a Tantra session, you should be signing some type of paperwork. My paperwork specifically states that there is no happy ending. There will be no ejaculation. Just like you don't go to a massage therapist and ask for ejaculation, you're not coming to me and asking for ejaculation. My paperwork specifically states that this is not a sexual thing. This is a healing modality. It is laid out. Before we have a session, you have to sign that paperwork. It is a legal binding contract. Any session that you have with someone should have something to that effect, so that if things do go awry, you have something that you can pull out. So those are just a few of the things for you to look at, that if those things are not in place, there's a red flag somewhere, and you should probably step back from that practitioner.
Yeah. Good stuff.